A beautiful Thursday and a very warm welcome to our main news bulletin at 19:30 on Camnet TV. Let's look at some of the top stories in our news tonight. Government-based COPERBELT-based grandmother cheated of her hard-earned money in a fake child support scheme. A 81-year-old man of CHONGWE district recently acquitted of a drug trafficking charge, sues the state. President Hakainde Hichilema directs State Secretary to the Cabinet to sell VX vehicles for ministers. In international headlines, regional leaders appeal for extension of SHAKY CEASEFIRE in Sudan. And in football great PELÉ enters dictionary to mean unique. We have the details of the news shortly.
Water is life. Each drop counts and each must be cherished. Our tried and tested product meets all international standards. With our smart drip technology, we aim to deliver precision irrigation designed to reduce blockage and wastage, ensuring a high yield. REIN Glow, your smart irrigation partner.
Thank you so much for joining us to present the news. My name is Louisiana Lupumbwe. We look at the details. A COPERBELT-based businesswoman, Annie Chilombela, has been left traumatized after she discovered that her grandson is someone else's child after investing time and resources. This is in a case in which police have arrested Purity Mulenga of Lusaka's Mandevu compound, who has been extorting money from the family of Mrs. Chilombela. Information obtained by Camnet TV News indicates that Purity was pregnant for Mrs. Chilombela's son before. However, she opted to leave the COPERBELT for Lusaka. She later last month informed the family of the man who impregnated her that she delivered a boy child and the family has been supporting the child ever since until now, when it was discovered that Mulenga never conceived as she had a miscarriage. And Mrs. Chilombela and her family have expressed shock that Ms. Mulenga has been parading someone's child with the motive of extorting money from them. She has since vowed that justice must be served on Purity and another woman who acted as her relative in order to deter would-be offenders. Details are in this report.
They say life is a wonders complex that never ceases, and sometimes things are not just unbelievable but unimaginable, as a COPERBELT-based woman has been left traumatized upon discovering that the child, supposedly her grandson, never existed, but it was just a game played by Purity Mulenga, who was allegedly parading someone's child to extort money from the family of a man who impregnated her. Miss Mulenga has since been arrested.
Bana Jonas tukunamba tuminako phone njebeli yawe bana Jonas phone yabo tairefika asina ne wile ndesha isha phone tairesta ntaireba through na okay. So nomba efyo nomba ine twalere paisa pitana kaidi amadezi fya nono na shida mfomwana wanja isa ulubile kuma 23 hours pa phone alisa aleranda pa phone awo bamudana mwinjipa ilo omwana bamudana mwinjipa ilo omwana umulumendo wewe nebeli yawe naraipa ashani umwana wenu ine uyu mwana kashali kunganda kumwanzi kwa nomba mwana nisha mushire kwiso uyu mukashana Purity ashire kwiso mwana atawe uyu mukashana takwata po mwana.
And this is the house where Mrs. Chilombela came to see her purportedly grandson and named him Jonas.
Umwana umwaume uyo mwana chachine na photos na likopere na photos ninkwata mu phone fiance fina bana kulwa bene bapano pene panganda bare itokwe bati banyi na wamukashana bapokerere na fiance so nomba uli omwana ineneshina na alinike ali pano pene panganda.
And Mrs. Chilombela's family has expressed shock that the child they have been supporting is not their relative but was being used to extort money from them.
Nipokelera kwa beni abawumfeni fo baba londurere ara batire Purity takwata po mwana Purity fumwa kwetera fuminena de na COPERBELT diari ona ikapama months ali 6 months ifumo no mwana kwa posta tatwa ishiba nomba ngoyo mwana balebo mfyo ko bati purity ali kwate omwana mwana wabana ni purity alebo mfya vyabufi abo bana kulunga pono pene panganda kanshi bali ninkama na purity no yo wino omwana na photos aya ninkwata aya uyo wino omwana o ifoto ale tumine fintu so for kwandi kubasenda kuisaisa pono bana kulubantu baishesa ngati naba butukange fifine malo twaishiresa twasanga titabalipo.
She has since vowed to take legal action on Purity and another woman who for now is only identified as Banakulu in order to deter who would be offenders.
Bali ubumutyewo balebe babasokolo kemwe bantu bakwalesa nga balalira abantu abo bene ebo balira lero teine ine nala abasuwinga nga kuba kakisha ndeba kakisha batyo bachita
Before broadcast time, our efforts to get the views from the Zambia Police Public Relations Unit could not materialize. Patrick Soko, Camnet News.
And criminals have vandalized a Zesco transformer and went away with cables, leaving several houses without electricity in Lusaka's Maploti area in Mtendere of Munali constituency. The residents interviewed by Camnet News have called on the power utility company to quickly restore power and find a lasting solution to the problem. Others are concerned that there has been a rise in criminal activities in the area due to limited police presence. Here is a report.
Acts of vandalism have persisted in various communities of Lusaka, with the latest being Mutendele Maplot in Munari constituency. Several houses have been left without electricity as criminals vandalized the transformer. The criminals had serious intentions to steal the cables, which seem to have a very good market as seen from increased cases of vandalism. The residents have complained over lack of police presence in the area, which they say serves as motivation for criminal activities.
Bakawala bativuta kuno kuma plot maka kulibe security kuno kuma plot tavutika maningi tipempa boma iyanganepo ititandizireko kuno kuma plot kumtendere east maka kuma light so apa banatidulira ntambo za malaiti bamakwera ngankale kuma po yonse kudula mantambo za malaiti so tipempako kuti boma ititandizire sure security kulibe kuno kuma plot bongo complain yani nayo kuno kuma ploti kuri best security problem mwandi area yatu isibakawala bativutisa maningi chabe paeda chabe pamozi na pamozi bakawala la sibati bestigona tibemtendere tibe peace so hapa transformer ili hapa ni mwezi kondo yaka malaiti yakondo tivutisa ni mwezi futi anabwera kuba bazeba bakawala boduranda so tipempako chabe simunga muno maploti security chabe batitandize kwa government batuonerepo chabe munga pali komboni yatu ndafamwandi tanzunzika ngani yabakawalala tilibema ukosa kuna minani ndiye vuto chabe anitinayo kuno kuma plot.
They are calling on power utility firm Zesco to find a lasting solution to the problem, as this is not the first time the transformer is being vandalized. They are concerned that the power utility takes too long to attend to emergencies.
Around 01 to 03 in between. Area Fiajisa Chitika Finkwimba Shabosa Vasenda drum Padilla Neba Baisa Quela Pova Kavala Navala Kamaringri Majanki Avaricona Bafulechine Tatwike Mumutende Ero transformer Yale Yakano Murido Ngatwalanda Wazesco Tapaife Butukira Palapite starting 3-4 days. Number if you have to put in my fridge. Stopeza ni wakala baba wakumbantamu. Walema kutuma phone from morning up to now. They haven't responded. They are just asking same questions. Which area you give them the area wakafunza mita namba wapa sawazi wako nukuzi wakati kuli problem ni kwa so bad kuti wabwere chabu wa Zesco. It takes time. So that's the challenge. So we need wa Zesco chinja kuma 7Z idwe. Bantu wakajandaura na problem yani wa face ya community wafuni wa respond fast because wamela wale ma shops ma groceries ndio kama fridges. Hivi manyumba
Before broadcast time, we were not able to get a comment from Zesco. Patrick Soko, Camnet News.
An 81-year-old man of Kavuma village in CHONGWE district who was accused of trafficking in 68 grams of marijuana early this year but later acquitted, has dragged the state to the Constitutional Court for unlawful prosecution. According to a petition filed before court, Mr. Taimwape contends that prior to his recent arrest and acquittal, the Drug Enforcement Commission had arrested him for a similar offense where he was convicted despite failure by the state to determine the required quantity of Delta-9 THC in the said drug. According to the Narcotic Drug and Psychotropic Act of 2021, to ascertain the presence of marijuana in a product, there should be over 0.3% Delta-9 THC. He now seeks an order that his arrest, prosecution and conviction without the state establishing the content of Delta-9 THC in the substance was unconstitutional, illegal and void. More in this report.
Despite being acquitted in January this year by the Lusaka's Magistrate Court on ground that the state had failed to prove the allegations against him beyond reasonable doubt that he was trafficking marijuana, 81-year-old Taimwape of Kavuma village in CHONGWE district has rushed to the Constitutional Court and filed a petition against the state over his earlier arrest and conviction. In a petition filed before court, Mr. Taimwape contends that prior to his recent arrest in November 2022 and acquittal, the Drug Enforcement Commission, DEC, had arrested him for a similar offense earlier, where he was convicted despite failure by the state to determine the required quantity of Delta-9 THC in the said drug. According to the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Act of 2021, to ascertain the presence of marijuana in a product, there should be over 0.3% of tetrahydrocannabinol, also known as Delta-9 THC. In November 2022, Mr. Mwape was arrested for trafficking in 68 grams of marijuana without authorization. He had informed the lower court that he was using the said for medical purposes for his grandson. Luckily, in January 2023, he was acquitted after establishing that the prosecution team had failed to determine the required quantity of Delta-9 THC in the drug. Mr. Mwape, who now claims that he was earlier unlawfully prosecuted and convicted for a similar offense, is seeking damages. The 81-year-old also wants the court to order that his previous arrest, prosecution and conviction without establishing the content of Delta-9 THC in the substance allegedly he was in possession of was unconstitutional, illegal and void. Further, Mr. Mwape wants an order that the possession of cannabis of the grade or value of 0.3% is legal, as it does not fall within the prohibited grades under Narcotic and Psychotropic Substance Act as read together with the third schedule to Act. Lastly, the 81-year-old is seeking a declaration that anyone arrested and convicted without adhering to the provision of Section 2, 15, and 16 of Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substance Act as read together with the third schedule are unconstitutional, illegal and void. Miriam Kaimba, reporting for Camnet TV News.
Patriots for Economic Progress leader Sean Tembo has asked the Constitutional Court to state whether it has jurisdiction to preside over a case that borders on preservation of culture, values and customs. Mr. Tembo's submission is in relation to a case where he has been dragged to court by former Secretary to the Cabinet Leslie Mbula for allegedly disparaging innuendos and insulting President Hakainde Hichilema. He has since urged the court to dismiss, arguing that only the local court has jurisdiction to render interpretation on cases of such nature. Details are in this report.
After noticing that he has been dragged to court by the former Secretary to the Cabinet, Leslie Mbula, for allegedly issuing derogatory remarks against the Republican President Hakainde Hichilema, Patriots for Economic Progress leader Sean Tembo seemed not to be convinced that the matter was taken to a right court. In his response to a lawsuit against him, Mr. Tembo has requested the Constitutional Court to state whether it has jurisdiction to preside over a case that borders on preservation of culture, values and customs. This is in a case in which veteran politician Leslie Mbula has dragged Mr. Tembo to court for a determination of whether the disparaging innuendos and insulting words against the head of state may be deemed to promote national values and unity. Mr. Mbula has also cited the Attorney General, Muliro Kabesha, as the respondent in the matter. He claims that the opposition leaders on his Facebook page been persistently issuing derogatory language when criticizing President Hichilema on various issues. However, in his defense to these claims, Mr. Dembo has submitted before the Constitutional Court that the case was wrongly commenced as the Constitutional Court lacks jurisdiction to engage in interpretation of the words ordinarily used by citizens as part of the constitutional interpretation. He has since urged the court to dismiss the case, arguing that only the local court has jurisdiction to render interpretation on cases of such nature. Meanwhile, the opposition leaders also told the Constitutional Court that President Hakainde Hichilema is not the only person that people refer to as Bali, arguing that most individuals countrywide have been referred to as such by the young generation in Zambia. Miriam Kaimba, reporting for Camnet TV News.
President Hakainde Hichilema has directed the Secretary to Cabinet, Patrick CHONGWE, to sell all VX motor vehicles that have been bought for use by government officials since the United Party for National Development UPND took over office. Addressing the Presidential Delivery Unit leadership at a workshop in Lusaka Thursday, President Hakainde Hichilema says he is disappointed that some government officials are applying to buy new VX vehicles despite agreeing that his government is not extravagant. The head of state says some officials have forgotten why they were appointed to their position and has since challenged ministers and permanent secretaries to start working together to deliver for the people who ushers the UPND into office. And the president says Zambia's official creditors are meeting today, Thursday, 27th April 2023, to give a roadmap on Zambia's debt. Details are in this report.
To ensure prudent utilization of the country's resources, Zambia's President Hakainde Hichilema has directed the Secretary to Cabinet, Patrick CHONGWE, to sell all government VX motor vehicles bought through request by some government officials since the United Party for National Development UPND took over office. Addressing the Presidential Delivery Unit leadership at a workshop in Lusaka that was comprising of cabinet ministers and their permanent secretaries, among others, the President says most of those holding public office have forgotten why they were appointed to those positions, as they are failing to deliver according to the expectation of the people who voted for them.
That expenditure, extravagance is not part of us. What do I see? You are still applying to buy new VXs. Secretary of Cabinet, anyone who has bought a VX in central government, in local government, in quasi-government institutions, yesterday I was in the IDC board. I would like an instruction which will be followed up to bring out those VXs, put them in the market and sell them. Anyone who bought a new VX after we formed the government.
The President has also reminded the cabinet ministers not to focus on traveling, but on delivering in their respective ministries.
Some ministers, they are perpetually traveling. Then you check the deliverables, but you should be ashamed to fill in a form to President to allow you to travel before you've done your basics that you need to take care of in the office. Same with permanent secretaries. Can we change? We should change the culture. Work is not 8 hours to 17 hours. No, I disagree. I was never brought up like that in the profession. Work is ticking off deliverables.
And the President has announced that Zambia's creditors are today, Thursday, the 27th of April 2023, meeting to deliberate on the country's debt, and is hopeful that if all goes well, stability will be restored in the country.
Myself, I've been calling presidents in the night to make sure that the official creditor committee meeting takes place today, Thursday today, and not in May. Because my mind is clear. If we don't take out this debt overhang, it will be very difficult to restructure this economy. So it's one of my personal deliverables as head of state. So you should have your own personal deliverables.
For now, all the president wants to see is work, work, and work. Prudence Chota, reporting for Camnet TV News.
The government has dispelled assertions by the opposition that it is involved in influencing the Registrar of Society to deregister the Patriotic Front Party. Addressing journalists in Lusaka Thursday, Ministry of Information and Media Director spokesperson Tabo Kawana says the troubles of the Patriotic Front and the Registrar of Society span back as far as April of 2021, before the UPND even came into office. Mr. Kawana says in 2021 the Registrar of Society did write to the Patriotic Front Party asking them to put their house in order by ensuring that office bearers of a party are registered at the Registrar of Society, which the PF has failed to do so since 2021. He, however, says in a case where the Patriotic Front is deregistered, it will not be the first political party to be deregistered, adding that 16 political parties were deregistered while the PF was in office.
Their troubles with the Registrar of Societies span back as far back as April of 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, April of 2021, the Patriotic Front were in office. The UPND as a political party was in opposition. President Hakainde Hichilema was in opposition and still running around and jumping over tear gases and so on, and getting arrested every now and then by the very Patriotic Front when they started having problems with the Registrar of Societies. What is simply there is that the Registrar of Societies has asked them to put their house in order. In the event that the Patriotic Front gets deregistered, it will not be the first party to be deregistered. Under the reign of the Patriotic Front, 19 political parties were deregistered. During their reign, the 10 years in office, 19 political parties were deregistered. You will recall the case of the NMD with 53 members of parliament. It was deregistered. After it complied, it was reinstated. You remember the issue of the Democratic Party? It was deregistered. It had to take the DP to go to court to get reinstated. You recall the National Democratic Congress, the NDC, it was deregistered. It had to go to the court and appeal to the court, and it was reinstated. So that's not the first time that a political party may be deregistered.
Zambia's annual inflation rate for the month of April has hit two-digit number for the first time in 9 months. Zamstat statistician General Mlenga Msepa says the inflation rate rose to 10.2% from 9.9% recorded in March this year. Mr. Msepa says the increase in the annual inflation rate is due to movement in prices of selected non-food items such as household appliances, which include refrigerators and cookers, as well as the purchase of motor vehicles. Meanwhile, the national average retail price of a 25-kilogram bag of breakfast mealie meal increased by 5 kwacha 11 ingwe from 193 kwacha to 203 kwacha, while the price of a 25-kilogram bag of broiler mealie meal increased by 4 kwacha 13 ingwe from 160 kwacha to about 167 kwacha. And Mr. Msepa says the country recorded a trade deficit of 2.8 billion kwacha in March 2023 compared to a surplus of 2.8 billion kwacha recorded in February 2023. Just now we'll take a break. We'll be right back with more news.
From time immemorial, we have had different types of lighting options, from those that can burn down our investments in minutes to those that dig holes in our pockets due to constant replacement and huge consumption of our ZESCO units. Savenda Electric introduces the new and advanced electric bulb with cutting-edge technology of LED that has low power consumption, gives out bright white light, and lasts up to 25,000 hours. Savenda Electric manufactures all types of LED light like plastic LED fluorescent tubes, down lights, ceiling lights, outdoor fittings, and solar street lights made to customer specifications. Let's live on the bright side of life by choosing the wide range of Savenda electric lighting solutions that are available in all leading stores and supermarkets countrywide. For orders, call 0962-642-490 or email jnbunda@savenda.com or pchabula@savenda.com.
Your skin is the biggest muscle in your body. That's why we make sure that Oracle is #1 when it comes to taking care of your precious skin. Oracle Pure Petroleum Jelly and Glycerin soothes, moisturizes, and keeps your skin perfect. Oracle Pure Petroleum products for that perfect skin.
For immediate coverage of any breaking or latest news in Zambia and around the world on Camnet television, call the numbers on your screen. Camnet television, bringing to your screens fair news, impartial news, credible and reliable news all the time. Get the whole truth on Camnet World News. Camnet Television, not just another channel.
Welcome back. We continue with the news. The Ministry of Tourism has said wildlife poisoning poses a significant threat to Zambia's precious wildlife. In a speech read for him by Acting Director in the Department of National Parks and Wildlife, Andrew Chomba, during the opening of the ongoing Wildlife Poisoning Response Protocol workshop in Chilanga, Mr. Evans Mohanga said wildlife poisoning has greatly contributed to the decline of wildlife populations, habitat degradation, and loss of human lives. He explains that wildlife poisoning, if not mitigated, has a devastating impact on the entire ecosystem and endangered species. The controlling officer, however, indicated that government remains committed in ensuring that it safeguards the country's wildlife and natural heritage for future generations. Mr. Mohanga said the successful implementation of the draft Wildlife Poisoning Response Protocol will greatly help in mitigating wildlife poisoning. He emphasized on the need to treat wildlife poisoning as an emergency that requires multidisciplinary response in order to prevent further poisoning and loss of wildlife. Mr. Mohanga has since called for coordinated response to address wildlife incidents effectively and timely.
The Ministry of Tourism supports all efforts in addressing this issue, and we are happy to see many organizations taking part in bringing an end to wildlife poisoning in Zambia. We strongly believe that this undertaking will positively contribute to halting the decline in many endangered species due to poisoning. I'm confident that the Wildlife Poisoning Response Protocol, once finalized and implemented, will serve as a critical tool in our conservation efforts, helping us effectively respond to wildlife poisoning incidents and safeguard our treasured wildlife populations. Together we can continue unwavering commitment to protect our wildlife.
That the challenges of wildlife poisoning are complex and multifaceted, but however, we believe that this protocol can make a significant contribution to addressing this problem. With your help, we can ensure that the protocol is effective in protecting Zambia's wildlife.
The challenge of wildlife health is that when you have, whether it's a carcass or it's a sickness,
One, there are areas which are far from human habitation. Two, there are geographical challenges to travel and reach the site where we have got such instances. So we need to expand on the pool of stakeholders who will play a role in the collection of data.
Zambia and the Democratic Republic of Malawi have signed a memorandum of understanding aimed at strengthening developmental cooperation between the two countries. Signing the agreement on behalf of the Zambian government, Western Province Minister PELÉ has asked the Angolan counterpart to consider tapping into the various agricultural potential that the province is blessed with. And Angola Governor of Moshiko Province, Dr. Ernesto, says Angola has a lot to learn from Zambia, more especially in the area of education. Details are in this report.
Zambia and Angola share a vast border, including cultural and traditional practices. For this reason, the two countries are geared to explore various investment opportunities in sectors such as health, agriculture, infrastructure development, and education. A memorandum of understanding aimed at strengthening developmental cooperation between the two countries has since been signed. Representing Zambia, Western Province Minister PELÉ says the province is endowed with massive agricultural potential, which Angola can tap into.
Has considered various areas of cooperation, which includes agriculture, food security, political and security affairs, trade and investment, health, education, tourism, and culture.
Identificou-se então diversas áreas de cooperação, que segurança, saúde, educação e cultura e outros aspectos aí mencionados.
With these wide-ranging sectors of mutual interest, we are confident that our relationship and the cooperation will be strengthened further from now going forward.
The provincial minister is optimistic that the memorandum of understanding will result in fruitful outcomes.
It is our hope that the finality to these matters will result in social and economic transformation that will benefit our people in both provinces and countries.
Angolan Representative Governor of Moshiko Province, His Excellency Ernesto Mwangala, says Angola is in need of expertise, especially in the fields of education and health.
Identify areas of cooperation, which is in education, health, social, and as well as the security of our common border that we share. Is that Angola needs immediately professionals in various domains.
The governor is also hopeful that the investment opportunities in both countries will better the lives of the two peoples.
We're going to work together so that we can better and develop our both provinces so that our people can benefit and have a free movement in our common borders.
Some of the major undertakings contained in the MOU include the construction of a road from Kalabo to Sikongo to improve cross-border trade, cultural and educational exchanges between Zambia and Angola, among others. Mulima Stumbeko reporting for Zanis in Mongu District, Western Province.
Government has constructed a 1x2 classroom block at Edmond Primary School in Lunte District in Northern Province using the 2022 Constituency Development Fund (CDF). Lunte Town Council Secretary Joseph Zulu says over 240,000 kwacha has been spent on the construction of the 1x2 classroom block. And the council is also putting up a water reticulation system and a solar system that will power the water system. And parents in the area have asked the government to provide the school with desks as well as work on the teachers' houses. Zanis now reports.
For many years, this tree is what pupils at Edmond Primary School of Malambo Ward in Lunte District used as classrooms for their learning. But as schools open, the over 100 pupils will learn from the newly built 1x2 classroom block using the 2022 Constituency Development Fund (CDF). Lunte Town Council Secretary Joseph Zulu says over 240,000 has been spent on the 1x2 classroom block.
As you can see, this classroom was a death trap, as the teacher mentioned before. During the rain season, we had the roof blown off and the structure was almost coming down. So we had to come in as the local authority using the CDF money to bring it to this standard. Following the presidential directive, we are putting up a water reticulation system here, about 10,000 liters tank, plus a solar system which will run the water system. Then we are putting up a waterborne toilet for the pupils here. So as Lunte district, this year, under CDF, we are procuring about 3,000 desks, which we hope to distribute in most of these schools which have got problems with desks. And
Malambo Ward Councillor Geoffrey Mukuka has commended the government for constructing a decent classroom block for the pupils.
Pali inonshita kulingana n'obuteeko butukwete n'abutukuulirako 1x2 ero kabiri natukwata na imbi 1x2 iyayishile under disaster component. Meanwhile,
parents in the area had this to say. Reporting for Zanis, Sylvia Zulu in Lunte District, Northern Province.
We'll take our last break. When we get back, we have the rest of the news in international and sports news.
Water is life. Each drop counts and each must be cherished. Our tried and tested product meets all international standards. With our smart drip technology, we aim to deliver precision irrigation designed to reduce blockage and wastage, ensuring a high yield. REIN Glow, your smart irrigation partner.
For immediate coverage of any breaking or latest news in Zambia and around the world on Camnet television, call the numbers on your screen. Camnet television, bringing to your screens fair news, impartial news, credible and reliable news all the time. Get the whole truth on Camnet World News. Camnet Television, not just another channel.
Welcome back in international news. Taking advantage of relatives' calm, many residents in Katume and the neighboring city emerged from their homes to seek food and water, lining up at bakeries or grocery stores after days of being trapped inside by the fighting between the army and a rival paramilitary group. Some inspected shops or homes that have been destroyed or looted. People queued for their basic needs in the neighboring city, and still gunfire and explosions could be heard in the city, though residents said clashes were in more limited pockets, mainly around the military's headquarters and the Republican Palace in central Khartoum and around bases in the neighboring city across the Nile River. Here is a roundup of international news.
There's almost nothing left untouched by fighting in this Shambat neighborhood of northern Khartoum. Those brave enough to venture out were met by debris, unexploded shells, and the mangled wreckage of military trucks crushed by airstrikes and vandalized commercial stores. As you can see, the market mosque was destroyed by the explosion. All the shops in the market were destroyed by the force of the explosion. Shop doors no longer open. On Wednesday, people took advantage of the relative calm to stock up on food, fuel and other supplies. Residents flocked to the few bakeries which are still functional to buy bread and flour. People are helpless. They queue for bread. They queue for petrol. There's no fuel. There's no bread or water. Security is not stable. And the situation is very bad in the health centers. People are sick and the injured are not able to receive treatment. Meanwhile, many foreigners continue to flee Sudan. On Wednesday, 136 Moroccans landed in Casablanca on an Air Maroc flight. The plane took off from Port Sudan in the east, as takeoff and landing for passenger jets is not possible in Khartoum. We left Khartoum, and after 36 hours by bus, we arrived in Port Sudan, where we spent 24 hours in a hotel. We then took the plane which made a stopover in Tunis before landing in Casablanca. On Wednesday, an Eastern African regional bloc submitted a proposal to extend a SHAKY ceasefire, agreed Tuesday by a further 72 hours.
The World Health Organization says COVID-19 deaths have dropped by 95% since the start of the year, but warns that the virus is here to stay and still on the move. It says countries need to learn how to manage its ongoing non-emergency effects, including the post-COVID-19 condition known as long COVID.
We're very encouraged by the sustained decline in reported deaths from COVID-19, which have dropped 95% since the beginning of this year. However, some countries are seeing increases, and over the past 4 weeks, 14,000 people lost their lives to this disease.
The WHO chief says, however, that the organization remains hopeful that it will be able to declare an end to COVID-19 as a public health emergency of international concern when it meets next month for its regular quarterly meeting. It's been a long wait, but 95-year-old Yoro Diao is finally going home. In his tiny studio in a Parisian suburb, he's preparing to leave together with 8 other former Senegalese riflemen. The decorated soldier fought for France in both Indochina and Algeria, but like other veterans, he had to live there for half the year or lose his military pension. Firstly, I gave France my blood, even if I didn't actually bleed, and my youth. My youth, the memory. I forget everything now. I forget everything. I'm old. In January, France dropped the condition, saying they could return home for good and continue receiving their monthly allowance of €950. It said it would also pay for the flights and move of veterans wishing to leave. It's a victory, a second victory after the war. We're allowed to go home while receiving our old age benefits. We will live well there. It's not at my age that I'm going to go off and marry a lot of women. What am I going to do with my benefits? I'm going to live, eat. You see, if this allows you to go home, to live well, to walk around the village, well, that's heaven. Hundreds of thousands of African soldiers fought for France in the 2 world wars and against independence movements in Indochina and Algeria. But today, only a few dozen of the former riflemen are still alive, and some of them are too frail to return home. It's difficult to live in a hostel in 7 square meters with no sanitary facilities, doing their shopping alone without their family. I've questioned this because I'm thinking they fought for France, yet they live in terrible conditions. And the second thing is that obviously they contributed to our freedom. To think that the French state did not recognize us and allow them to be French, that was inconceivable for me. It was even a shock. And for that reason, I fought these battles for them and will continue to do so. The men were granted French nationality in 2017 only, after years of lobbying. Another victory for these old men who will return home on Friday, where they can finally live in peace, surrounded by their families.
And that is all the news that we could accommodate in international news. Time now for sports. In sports news, Pelé, the nickname of the late football legend, has officially become synonymous with exceptional, incomparable, unique. The Portuguese language Michaelis Dictionary, one of the most popular in Brazil, added Pelé as a new adjective to its online edition. The inclusion came after a campaign by the Pelé Foundation to honor the football star gathered more than 125,000 signatures. Pelé died in December, aged 82. The only player to have won the World Cup 3 times, he is widely considered to be the best footballer in history. Now, during his playing career, spanning 2 decades, he scored a record of 1,281 goals with Brazilian club Santos, Brazil's national team, and the New York Cosmos. Since his death from complications from colon cancer, his former club, Santos Sports Channel Sport TV, and the Pelé Foundation had been pressing for the football's star name to be recognized with its own entry in the dictionary. On Wednesday, the publishers behind Michaelis Dictionaries announced the word would be included in the digital edition of their Portuguese language dictionary immediately and in the printed version once the next edition was published. On that sporting note, we wrap up the main news, but before we go, let's look at the headlines once again. COPERBELT-BASED grandmother cheated of her hard-earned money in a fake child support scheme. A 81-year-old man of CHONGWE district recently acquitted on a drug trafficking charge sues the state. President Hakainde Hichilema directs Secretary to the Cabinet to sell VX vehicles for ministers. In international headlines, regional leaders appeal for extension of SHAKY CEASEFIRE in Sudan. And finally, football great Pelé enters dictionary to mean unique. We now look at the Camnet verse 4 today, coming from James 1 verse 26. It reads, "If anyone considers himself religious and yet does not keep a tight rein on his tongue, he deceives himself and his religion is worthless." Thank you so much for watching. On behalf of the entire production and news crew, my name is Louisiana Lupumbo. It's bye for now. God bless and enjoy the rest of our programmings. Good night.